uscita HDMI del PC l'ha spedito. E se no i Dell, se no devo prendere i Dell. Ah, funziona l'HDSDI? E come mai funziona? Si vede? Cos'è che ti volevo dire? Dopo guardo lo schema, un'uscita libera ce l'ho perché ero l'uscita 4, vai.
Buonasera e bentrovati, grazie per essere intervenuti qui alla Fondazione Enrico Mattei. Io sono Veronica Ronchi, mi occupo di organizzare un ciclo di lectures, di cui questa è la prima per il 2019, e tratteremo di temi che riguardano l'Africa. In particolare il nostro scopo è far parlare gli africani della loro terra, quindi far parlare gli africani di Africa. Oggi abbiamo con noi Mokhtar Sakande, lo vedete qui, è un funzionario della FAO, originario del Burkina Faso, e poi ha conseguito il suo dottorato di ricerca nei Paesi Bassi e poi ha lavorato per 15 anni nel capitale agricolo di fatto in Inghilterra, quindi è un esperto di fatto di sistema agricolo, e questa sera ci parla dell'African Great Green Wall, cioè un grande progetto che la FAO sta costruendo dal 2004 e che riguarda appunto il contrasto alla desertificazione, aiutandoci a comprendere come questo è avvenuto nel corso di un periodo piuttosto lungo che parte dal 2004 e arriva alla contemporaneità. Quindi Mokhtar, se vuoi, diciamo, if you want to go there to get your presentation. Okay. Quindi grazie mille, lo accoglierei con un applauso.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Annie, for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Somehow things have worked out quite in the right way, because initially it was just to talk about the food issue. And at the end, this landed in my desk to talk about the Africa Great Green Wall, which is part of my program that I'm developing with the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. As Veronica said, I'm from Burkina Faso. I studied mainly in Europe, in Wageningen University. I started working at Kew Garden, spent more than 15 years in research at Kew before moving to FAO. I'm now based in Rome, working on mainly the restoration issue globally. For this evening, I would just want to take you through a journey in Africa, which is close to my heart, close to home. And then to talk about the Great Green Wall. I'm pretty sure that you have heard about this program, because I've been in it's been in discussion for more than a decade now. It's the Africa Union program. It started in 2007, mainly with the politicians. The head of state of the continent have decided at that time to build a wall of trade across the continent. So this program with the African Union, once have been decided by the head of state, just to build a wall to contain the Sahara, which is the biggest desert in the world. So you think about the largest part of the continent, from the Atlantic to the Red Sea. They just wanted to build a line of trees. That's been the vision, the decision from the head of state. That is easily said than done, because if you look at the continent and you look at where that wall needs to be built, there's really, really a lot of technical challenges linked to how to apply that decision. But at that time, it was a great vision, because across that level, you have not less than 20 countries that have been involved. So what I want to talk about is the transformative tree planting for sustainable development and the achievement so far. What have been realized on that. Talking to you about the origin of the program, the African Union have decided to go with this restoration program. The beauty of the program is just like it's a solidarity program, bringing more than 20 countries together. The overall goal we managed to discuss within the countries to have a kind of harmonized strategy. The harmonized strategy came through the realization that in that part of the continent, we needed some investment, mainly because of the climate change, because life is becoming difficult for the populations. So they decided to do something about it. As I said, the initial idea is to look at the 400 millimeter rainfall per annum. And that rain comes between 3 and 4 months a year. So you have only one chance of harvest during the whole year. So if you have 3 months of rain, it means that you have the 8, 9, 11 months where there's no rain, there's no way to produce some food. So life was becoming quite difficult for those populations. So they decided to focus this program on that. I'm saying that because it's important, because it doesn't encapsulate the whole countries. It's just that line of trees. When they started, it was to the width of, to look at 15 kilometers wide and about 8,000 kilometers long. Don't take that figures, because quickly that's have changed. Because if you want to do rural development, it's not just the width of 15 kilometers that will make an impact. So quickly that notion have changed to have a mosaic of intervention that is meaningful to the lifestyle and the population living in that area. What came as an important component of that harmonized strategy, accepted by all the politicians and the involved countries, is that restoration is a key component. And that is more than a decade ago, finding that if you restore land, if you make land productive, that can embed a lot of solutions to the problem that the community were living in. Very important component. And at that time, you realize that land degradation is not yet irreversible. It's just like the natural resources are depleting. By putting some effort and energy on that, you can reverse the whole situation. That was even known before the SDGs. You have heard about the Sustainable Development Goals. When that came, and then you match that with the Great Green Wall objective, all the components that have been visioned by the African Union fit really well with all what have been decided in 2015 as a Sustainable Development Goal. So meaning that at the continental level, there was a bit ahead of all what's have been decided later on as a Sustainable Development Goal. Now, the Great Green Wall, as I said, when the politician had that vision, there's no detail, there's no direction, there's no information how to follow the implementations. FAO have been part of the journey. And very quickly, we start asking those questions. How big is it? You look at the Sahara, how big is the desert? You look at the arid and semi-arid land, how much can be done? How wide? What is the extent of the task related to the Great Green Wall? And how much is needed to implement it? I don't even want to mention the cost, how much will cost to implement this sort of big program that I've never seen before. There's no example that you can look at it at that scale to implement it. So from FAO side, what we start working on is how to catalyze some actions. Starting first of mapping the scenarios. It's happened that, yes, the dryland community have been living there for centuries. There's something to learn from the communities and see how you can fix the climate issue. The second part of our involvement in this program is to look at the technicalities. What approach is needed to implement such a big initiative at such a bigger scale? When this is one of the maps we come up with, for the first time we did the assessment around all this area, potentially to see what is there as a possibility for restoration. Land restoration comes as a priority. As I said, but how much can be done? The green you have seen, they are not just vegetation. These are the need for the restoration. So the big hole in the middle, that is the Sahara. Just a bit of statistic. The dashboard, to know how big is it, we work on 3 scenarios. One is the high expectation, the high ambition, how much you can restore. That is the 21%, the medium 16%, and the lowest is 8%. 8% of what? We work out that around the Sahara, you have 780 million hectares that are restorable. The higher scenario, where you can have some impact, that comes to 166 million hectares for restoration. Really massive. If you align that with the Sustainable Development Goal by 2030, what is needed is something like 10 million hectares per annum to be restored. This is the message we start bringing back to the country, to the head of state, to the government, and so on, so that we realize what is the scale, and then start thinking about how that can be done. Frightening, massive investment. 10 million hectares along the Great Green Road need restoration every year to achieve the zero land degradation by 2030. Nobody have ever been able to do that. When we come up with the map was in 2016, and so far, the realization or the implementation is really a drop in the ocean. I'm developing that. Now, the technicality, how to approach the problem. We managed to come with a scenario, the approach in 5 steps, starting from the communities and ending with the communities. Because you are not doing just the ecological component, but as I said, you have the rural development component. People have to get something out of the whole operation. So we start with the communities, you assess what they need, what they want to do, you look at the ecology, you take all the data. We are in any research institution, you do all the studies, you put that together, you see how you can bring the solution to the communities and how you can monitor. Because before we started, it wasn't any sort of monitoring of the program. Now, talking to the community, consulting the communities, on that the approach was also knowing the landscape that we are operating with. You have heard about the land grab in Africa. That's have started at the same time. So what we start addressing is talking to the community, finding out the available land that needs restoration, that belong to the communities, having their agreement to improve that conditions. So far, since we started the last 5 years, we did not have any issue related to land, because the land is recognized by the communities, accepted by the different villages where you're intervening before you started. So when you consult the community to know what they want to do in terms of restoration, how they want to do it, this came as a surprise, because usually the continent Africa is just like there's no self-reliance in terms of food. The food security is an issue. You sit down with the community. If you look at this pie chart, the 3 important components are not for food. That is also due to the lifestyle of people. They're nomads, they have some livestock. Livestock come as a number 1, the feed for the animals. I've seen some program, for example, the World Food Program, it's a sister institution, where they help community with some food. But that food sometimes even share with the animals. Because when the shortage hit, it's not just people, but they think also about their animals. So the animal feed come as a number 1. The other 2 are veterinarian species or human health. So health is becoming a massive, massive component and important for these people. I mean, if you look at the SDG goals, there's One Health, now combining animal and human health. You break it down to understand how you can address now the issue related to the communities. I've been talking about the scale. How now to address the scale, knowing what communities want. The pie chart I show, that is more than 50 villages or 200 villages or communities. You put that together, how to start the implementation at scale. That's what we started from. This chart shows where we start improving. Talking about the harmonized strategy, 400 millimeter per annum. That's it. 400 in 3-4 months. You have to do all your production. But it's happened that we studied how you can take advantage even with that little rainfall in the region. Water is a big issue. The soil productivity is a second one. Now, if you look at when we started, the population were working manually to prepare the land. There's a traditional way of preparing the land to capture the water rainfall. You create a kind of small dam, micro dam, so at contrapoint, so that the slope, when it's rain, is captured that water. And that takes 100 people to dig by hand 1 hectare per day. That was not acceptable. What we started from, because we wanted to go at scale, is how to help that component by putting some machinery. It's happened that we got this machine, the appropriate technology. For those who knows, this is the Valerani creation. It's an Italian engineer who created that based on his experience in the Sahel. So what the machine is doing is just mimicking what these ladies are doing on the ground by hand. So creating all those micro dams. And it can work out 15 to 100 hectares per day. And that seemed to be the type of technology that we needed to go at scale. Why we are doing that? I talk about the water catchment. By hand, the depth is limited. You can have 100 liters out of the 400 rainfall. With the machine, you have 10 times more because of the depth and because also you work out the land. That was a massive improvement. And when it's rain, you can see on those micro dams, the water is captured. And this water can remain, the humidity can remain in those areas 2 months after the rainfall. So already, if the rainfall is 4 months, we managed to extend that to 5 or 6 months, which gives more chance to the plant to grow. The improvement of seed and seedlings. You have heard big program about restoration. People don't realize, but every hectare counts. If I say hectares, it's about a football pitch size. Yeah, I'm a bit fan of AC Milan, the football club. You see, 1 hectare is about 1 football pitch. When I'm talking about millions, you can imagine what it takes. So this material, the planting material to mobilize that, with the forest seed, because these are not agric seed. It's not multiply and then store somewhere. You have to start harvesting that from the wild and planting them because you want to just improve the soil. So we use some microorganisms to help. These are the organisms that live in symbiosis with the plants, the root system, and so on. You analyze that in the soil. You inject that in the seed or the seedlings to help in terms of resilience in the soil. So you improve the land, water catchment, soil permeability, you bring some microorganisms, you bring the right species that respond to, I've seen previously the analysis of what the community wants, either for fodder, for medicine, or for food, etc. You plant them. You can see in this picture, the 2 one in the bottom, that you have still some green plants in the ditches that have been prepared, whilst around is completely dry. That is in the dry season. And that's what I'm talking about, at least 2 month extension. That gives the chance of the little seedling to settle on the ground. Land restoration can be tackled without unleashing the economic potential of Africa dryland. We have to be real. As I said, it's not the ecological component. Farmers is their investment. They want to get something out of the restoration. It's not just going planting the trees, but they worry also, what can I get out of that, like anybody else. So how to consider that? This is to show first what we got as a result in 3 seasons. You prepare the land, and it's really massive scale. This is about 200 hectares. That's why we are putting the machinery. And now we are using some drone to look at, all because it's becoming too big. But if you invest what is needed, this is 3-season result already. They're not all grasses. You combine the woody and the fodder species, and in 2 years' time, you have a good coverage. And this is done one for all. And within that, I can come back to that later, the farmers are getting at least the feed for the animals, while the little seedlings, the woody seedlings that are growing, waiting for longer time before getting some product for that. And among the product, for example, a lot of acacias that are well adapted to the place, they plant them, it's just to also get some gum out of that. But that will take 6, 7, 8 years. While they're waiting for that, there are some components which are, the feed for the animals that they can get from the investment. The benefit to the rural communities and the ecology. Since we started the last 5 years, we have restored 100,000 hectares. If you are familiar with all what is going on in terms of restoration, even at FAO with my colleague, it's just like, it's limited, it's too little. But this is considerable. When we started with the Great Green Wall, no other organization have this sort of result to present to you. It can be checked. The 50,000 hectares, with at least, we are now covering 9 countries. And every village, you have between 50 and 200 hectares that is covered in terms of planting. The benefit, I've seen on the top pictures, this is in Niger. For the first time, the community are bringing some hay, the fodder species in the market, selling and then getting something out of that. Usually, or before that, it's just natural. The animal just graze naturally, but because it's depleting, it's not there anymore. You plant them, they start earning some income in year 1 of the operation. That's making a massive difference. Year 2, you can see here, they start growing some leguminous species, okay, which, with the improvement of the soil and the humidity in the soil, allow them to grow some of these species. From that on, we can say that so far we have bringing some viable solution to the challenges linked to climate change and the land restoration, because you talk about the potential, all what needed to be restored. You have the economic benefit and you also have the ecological benefit. We're talking about the carbon credit corporation to see how much they can measure as a carbon credit so that it helps the villages. That is not all the story. I talk about the hectareage that we are covering, the restoration we are doing. With the new technology, every hectare where we invest, we monitor. So it's not just to write on the report that we have done 10 hectares. If it's 10 hectares, we have to know that it's 10 hectares. You take the polygon, the geo-coordinate of the land, you can follow, you can monitor to see how successful or if you're failing, through that. Every hectare counts. If it's 9.5, it's not 10 hectares. So all the reports that come, we had some tough discussion with government, with communities, because now the new technology allowed, me sitting in my office to look at what has been done. This is just an example in Niger. You can see on the left side. Even just by measuring, you can look at it if it's exactly 10 hectares, it's 11 hectares, or it's 9.5. These are the technology that you're using to monitor, and also to look at the development of the biomass, the land, the trees while they're growing, how you can keep monitoring that and see how you have been successful in the restoration. We do those observations also to look at the change in the land use. This is important, is helping. This is an example in Niger. Okay. Over less than 5 years, you can see, for example, the bottom. When it started, it looked like a place available for restoration. And all of a sudden, it becomes a big agglomeration, a big village. So that helps also to monitor and see in terms of land investment, what you're getting, how successful you are, or how much you are not successful and how you're failing as well. Now, since the last couple of years, there have been a lot of opportunities coming. From the Paris Climate Conference, first they established what is called the IFR 100, Africa 100 million. There have been some pledges from African countries to restore 100 million hectares by 2030. And different countries are coming with that component. The other opportunities is that the Great Green Wall started in the northern part of the continent. Quickly, the African Union are moving the same scenario in the southern part. For those who are familiar with the Namib-Kalahari Desert, it's just to repeat what I've been doing, we have been doing in the north, in that area with the southern African communities as well in the SADC region, which cover about 18 countries. So all in all, if you do the calculation, the north and the south, globally in Africa dryland, you have something like 284 million hectares. Potentially that can be restored. This is really important because, I mean, I believe that the food security issue is not linked to the humid forest that you have in the Congo Basin side and so on, but is linked to where you have more opportunity, where you have bare land. You have seen the pictures, nothing could be grown, but if you improve that, all of a sudden, going from nearly zero, you can just start getting something out of that. And these are opportunities. The last one to say, just last March, it has been decided that the UN decade for ecosystem restoration will come from 2021 to 2030, meaning that there's a awareness or awareness that we need to solve the land restoration issue. Linked to that, you have different components where people can earn some income and improve their life. This is just the global picture of the 284 million potential restoration area on the continent. Before I finish, just to explain, we just run a short video about the operation specifically in the northern part of Burkina. You will see it captures really what I've been saying, mainly the land preparation component, and when you're successful with the right species, plant it in the right time to respond to different needs, what are the benefits you can get in terms of food production for the small farmers, in terms of what we call the non-timber forest production as well for income generation with the community. So I'll invite you just to see the video.
Exacerbated by drought and climate change, land degradation is a serious threat to Burkina Faso's sustainable development. 1/3 of the country is considered degraded. It was necessary to find an urgent answer to remedy this. Since 2016, FAO and its partners have responded through the Action Against Desertification AAD program. This program supports the Great Green Wall for the Sahara and the Sahel initiative launched a few years ago by the African Union.
Nous avons privilégié la restauration à grande échelle et c'est pour cela que la FAO a introduit la charrue delphino qui consiste donc à labourer les terres et les paysages dégradés avec donc un équipement approprié. La restauration est un processus. Donc le projet a fait déclencher en réalité ce processus de restauration. Il faudra une action continue, ne serait-ce de surveillance de ces sites pendant encore 2 ou 3 ans pour que les plants qui sont sur les sites soient assez consistants pour échapper donc aux dents des animaux.
In order to stimulate plant growth and to reinforce their resilience, AAD is doing research into the contribution of microorganisms. The Institute for the Environment and Agricultural Research, INERA, has established test fields. A team is monitoring plant growth on site regularly.
Commencé il y a 2 ans, sur du rien, complètement insomnieux. Ces zones qui sont desséchées, qui font partie de la muraille verte, il n'est pas encore tard pour les transformer, pour récupérer. C'est-à-dire la dégradation n'est pas aussi avancée au point que ça soit irréversible. Donc on peut réverser cette tendance en investissant tout ce qu'il faut, en mettant toute la technologie qu'il faut. En amont, ce qu'on a fait, c'est questionner la population des objectifs de la restauration.
In workshops, some 12,500 people from 45 villages have developed their knowledge in sustainable land management. Land restoration revives the ecosystem, but also provides new income for people through the exploitation of woody and non-timber forest products, such as the production and sale of herbaceous fodder, beekeeping, or the production of oil and soap from the balanites tree.
Nous avons donc sélectionné quelques filières qui sont donc le balanites, c'est-à-dire le dati du désert. Et cette espèce pourvoyeuse permet donc de transformer les amandes en huile, puis donc en savon.
We must go as fast as possible. It is in this spirit of urgency that FAO and its partners have carried out this project with convincing results that often exceed expectations. The example of AAD in Burkina Faso shows that we can fight against desertification and that this struggle will bear fruit.
You know what's the point in that? You do all the thinking, where are we?
Thank you very much.
Grazie a Mukhtar Sakande per questa bellissima lecture. Vorrei chiedere al pubblico se avete delle domande da porre a Mukhtar. Prego.
How many money did you spend for this project? For the intervention? How much?
Prendiamo tutte le domande, poi...
Thank you. Best compliments, very interesting. I'm Beatrice Nicolini. I'm teaching history of Africa in the Faculty of Political and Social Sciences in the Catholic University. I would like to know how do you deal with a phenomenon like, for example, the land grabbing and also the presence of many situations, like in Ethiopia, for example, concerning the division of lands, which is not something really easy to manage with this kind of projects. Thank you.
Hello. First of all, thank you for the lecture. It was very interesting and inspiring. I would like to thank Ms. Ronchi, Veronica, if I remember well. You had very nice opening sentence in which you said that the motto here is to give word to people from Africa when speaking about Africa. And actually you inspired me to ask this question to Mr. Sakande, which is about the politics of the project. I'm interested in, you said that the project was initiated by the African Union, and I'm interested in dynamics of negotiation between African countries and the funders of the project, that is the United Nations, the European Union, etc., etc. So the dynamic of this top-bottom, let's say, relationship. Thank you.
Yeah, hello, thanks again. I would like to thanks as well for your intervention. Yeah, I'm connecting to the previous questions. Yeah, so I was also interested in knowing, except from the economic resources and the technical issues that you discussed with us, I was interested about the political aspects. So I mean, if I'm not wrong, you said it involved 20 countries. So what's the relations between them? Which were the problems, which I guess, I mean, land grabbing and land use as well may have raised. And another question is about the monitoring and evaluation system, which I guess is one of the tough part of this project because it involved an extended land. I mean, thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much for your yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, the very last question. Yes, my question is more on the gender impacts of this type of massive projects. If you could maybe specify something related to the involvement, engagement of women in these activities of regenerative agriculture and so on. Thank you.
Can I have a go now? If time permits, we can, take a second series of questions. Thank you very much for your interest and the question. I will start with the gender issue because that is really critical. You have seen in the picture, for example, the land preparation where we started from, mainly women. I would say it's really shocking to see those images, but that is the reality. You go out there, for example, the rainfall starts next month. It's June to September. And you find that in most of the villages, because it's a dry season, the men are out with the animals, nomadism. And it's only the women that remain in the village. And some of the program, they call it cash for asset or cash for food or cash. Some of the institutions are developing that, and the women have to go out and then have this activity to earn something. That was the first observation, and that is what we at FAO we turn it quickly to bring the machinery to help at least to prepare the hardest part of the work, which is the land preparation. Now the women now are contributing in the seed collection, which is less, harder and so on. And even within that now, they manage to have some seed store, the forest seed store, not the crop, that they're selling to other projects. That is really one of the benefits for that. That is one of the components we managed to change quickly because it was really, really shocking to see that component. The second aspect, you have seen the non-timber forest products, the desert date. It's just the almond that you can collect, and then you press the almond, you have some oil. The oil is edible. These women have been trained at least how to make some soap out of that. And this is the soap they're selling. It's not even going out. It's just in the surrounding they manage to, these are some of the activities that we managed to get for the women. And next to that is not shown here, but we have what we call the nutrition garden, which is just the garden to produce some vegetable and so on that they're selling, and then they're using that also. So the gender component is really, really critical. And then we are turning that, because in those regions you have 50 to 52% of the population are women. And in terms of species, I show in the chart as well, the use of the species is sometimes related to the gender. If you take a lady in the family, she cares about the health of the children. Some of the species are used for traditional medicine and so on. We take all that on board to see how we can address those issues related to the women. Yes, very critical and very important question. Now the cost. Roughly what we are spending, we got for this component, we got some funding from the EU, the European Union. Wanted to also have some investment in the development of the Great Green Wall. This is really important because when it started in 2007, the countries started preparing. There's a hope that the funding will follow quite soon, but from where? A lot of countries have prepared their action plan without any funding at all. Even we at FAO, we have been helping the country to develop their strategy and action plan. It's ended up being a pile of paper for each of the countries, dreaming that, okay, if we have some funding, we can start prioritizing this and these activities. But the funding were not coming. 2014, we got some funding from the EU to start the implementation of the program. This was the very first implementation for some of the countries. Now, all the funding we have got, so far we are spending something like $400 per hectare. And that figures is for 5 years program, including the initial land preparation, including the planting, including the maintenance, including everything, the training of the communities and so on. That is the sort of figures, about $400 for 5 years. And this is really working and is making a difference. What I'm saying now, the 50,000 hectares that we managed to get, it's helped us to have the methodology and the direction about what needs to be done. Now, if there are some donors who can come in the game or who can just support, we have the knowledge, we have the technology, we know now how to go at scale with this component. I showed the machine, you have 15 to 20 hectares per day. You just need to multiply that by 10, 100,000, put that on the ground to help with the hardest part of the job. The rest, with the plant knowledge and all that we have, we just can do it. Currently, we are talking to, for those who know, the Green Climate Fund, which is a massive fund put together to tackle the climate issue globally on the planet, looking at developing as well as the developed countries to see how they can invest money straight into this sort of restoration activities. So briefly, that is what we're spending. In terms of land grabbing, yes, that has happened in the continent or in many places. Let's be clear about it. I mean, the places where we are working, there's hardly any dispute about the ownership, because these are already some places that have been abandoned because of the poverty. I mean, the soil is not fertile anymore. So the farmers are not even exploiting those soil anymore. The 14 millimeter, the 400 millimeters, you look at on the map, it's about the 14 parallel north. This is the area that the farmers are going further south, not exploited at all. And that's why if you look at the picture, they're completely bare soil. But if you invest, if you plant the right material, you can just revive those soil. That is one issue. The second issue, so far we are talking at the community level. So before intervention, you discuss with the communities to know what they want to do, what are the bare land not exploited that needs some restoration, to have that agreement. So it's not individual, and even between villages, you have all this space, often completely empty. That's why we work out what is available in terms of operation or in terms of need for restoration. 10 million hectares per annum, 254 million for the whole continent. And these are places you look often, there's nothing. There used to be something, but the resources are depleting. So far, we have not had any problem. Government is even helping the community to have some acts, the land tenure, to improve the land tenure, so that because they start getting, some income through the fodder, through what they're harvesting, to recognize those investments for different villages. We have that support. So far it has never been, some issue. Places like Ethiopia, again, we work in several weredas. The same approach you discussed, because it's quite transparent. It's not like we are supporting the community to improve what they already have, because that doesn't belong to FAO or any institution or external and so on. So we are just supporting. So often what is given or where we can do the intervention, there's no dispute, there's no, we did not get any issue for that. And as I said, usually it's just places that are not really exploited, places that are completely abandoned. But we have to be careful, and that's why we're discussing with government. Once the land becomes productive again, it can bring some issues. That is the second set. But so far, for the investment, we did not encounter any issue related to that. The politics, the dynamic policy, yes, that's FAO as a UN organization, we are working to support the government. As I said, this program, the whole program, comes under the African Union Commission. And the African Union, with all the 20 countries and so on, they have agreed that this is a priority that need to be moved. Starting in 2007, 2015, they added also 100 million hectares, all in the pledges. So if you go further to what they, the replication of the same program in the SADC countries, you start getting really the scale. But these are the issue posed to government where they need to address the issue of climate change and also the development of their population. So we are just supporting. Now, this program is run with the African Union Commission. We have regularly meeting in Addis where there is the summit of the head of state. We report to the African Union. There's a Pan-African agency. This is the coordination body on behalf of the African Union who are overlooking at the program that what you're doing. The investment is not only from the European Union, you have the World Bank, you have different donors or sources of funding. All that is coordinated at the African Union level. So as a UN system, we are supporting the continent or the countries, the villages, to address those issues. The economics, yeah, that is also linked to that. When we started the program, you have to realize, and then I said it again, these farmers is an investment. For their time, what they want for the land, mainly is the three components, either in terms of agroforestry or the silvopastoral system, either for farming to get some production of crop that they can use, or it for the animals to look at also those systems. Now, the economical part, it really, you cannot, the initial vision of just planting the trees, we have some tree planting, but the tree will take 8-10 years to get some product. The biggest success of this program is really to address the further issue as well, because that is part of the lifestyle of those communities in those areas. So to combine that, so you have the economic component, and again, this is supporting the villages. Most of the villages, what they organize is, they call it the village committee around those plots, where they manage that. They have some training. All the income coming from the field, they organize themselves to use that, sometime for schools, sometime for the dispensers, sometime for different uses in the village. So we look at the model and just we support, because that doesn't belong to FAO or any other organization. So far, again, the fact that we link up the economy and the ecology have helped a lot. As I said, the first consultation, it's helped you to understand what they want to do, what are the problems, and then you start bringing some solutions. Monitoring and evaluation, very good point, because this is also some innovation that we start bringing. At FAO, in the forestry department, for so long, we rely on the country report. People will say, okay, deforestation is going at the rate of 5% per annum, 10% per annum. You get that in the report, but you don't have any means to verify. You pile that up, and then globally you said, okay, deforestation is going at this extent on the planet. Now, with this program, with the new technology, the imagery, with high resolution images, every hectare, you can just dive in and then follow what is going on. Currently, I'm following, for example, the prediction for the rain for this year, starting for next month. The landers have been prepared. You can see exactly where it's happened and how it's happened. For some of the partners, I could even find out the day that they start working with the machine to change the land preparation. From what wasn't there, and you can see all of a sudden that you have, all those micro catchment prepared by the machine and so on. These are some of the important innovation that we are bringing, and we're using the same also to measure the deforestation. If you have a surface area of the forest this year, you can monitor regularly and then see which parts have been cut down, how it's reducing, so that we have more transparency and more clarity about what we are losing or what we are gaining. Not relying anymore on just what is said in the report, because for some governments it's just, okay, we have planted 10 million seedlings. Wonderful. Where have you planted those seedlings? You can follow that. Year 1, year 2, year 10, to see how you are increasing the biomass and how successful you are in your restoration program. I think I've captured comment, question so far.
Avete altre domande da porre a Mokhtar?
So if there's some other comments, I mean, yeah.
Facciamo solo un ultimo giro.
Question, comment, negative, positive, I will take.
Don't worry.
Okay. I first of all thank you for this inspiring lecture. I have 2 questions. The first question is look into the deforestation of the Amazon forest. Is this, on the global perspective, a way to mitigate this issue, this tendency that is happening? And the second question, it's concerning the African Free Trade Agreement. So the huge boost in infrastructures, like look into the map. I'm from Ghana, so look into the map. I see that most of this project is in the northern part of the country, which is an area that lacks of infrastructure to connect to the southern part. So it's central in this project of infrastructure. So do you have a way to balance these 2 needs? I will ask.
Se non ci sono altre domande, Mokhtar risponderà a questa e poi faremo una pausa.
Thank you very much for these 2 questions. They're really relevant. Yes, it's part of, it can be considered part of mitigation with the deforestation. Already there's some program which is reducing the emission through deforestation, the RED Plus program, in the Amazonian forest or in the Congo Basin and so on, which roughly is, how to help the surrounding communities to be better off instead of cutting down the forest and then getting, some income through that. How to compensate that instead of just cutting the forest. That program has been put in place the last 5 or 6 years. But to be frank, it's not working. Because you cannot pay the community next to the forest not to use the forest. Because it's not working. Deforestation is still going on. Yes, globally, this can be considered as a mitigation program. I talk about the Green Climate Fund, for example. That is just either the adaptation component or the mitigation component. If we manage, for example, at the continental level, these are millions of hectares where you have really little, you don't have much biomass. If you manage to get all this restoration going on, what a massive opportunity for carbon sequestration and so on and so forth. Yes, it's considered as a mitigation component, but provided also that we're able to go at scale. The 50,000 hectares seem little, but it's been really hard work to get to that level. As I said, some of the countries, like for example, Ethiopia, the colleague mentioned that Ethiopia pledged 22 million hectares by 2030. That is the country pledge. Really, realistically, it's a massive, massive investment. You cannot stop the whole country to go for planting to be able to get those 22 million. But imagine if by 2030, even half of those big numbers, if you manage to get the tree planting, you manage to get the biomass, it will help globally the whole planet. Yes. Now, that is linked to your second question, which is the Africa free trade component. We are tackling this issue because personally I believe that there's a lot of solution through the land component. The 400 millimeter rain per annum, if you use it well, you can increase, it can give enough crop of food for the 12 months in the year. But if you miss it, on all the media, the TV, you'll hear, people start asking famine here and there, famine, it just, either you get it right or you miss it, become a massive problem. We can still get it right. We are trying to cover that component. If you solve the land issue, you solve a massive, massive connected other issue at the same time. Now, the other institution or other group that are addressing the infrastructure component, which is really massive, because when the production, we'll get the production, you need to be close to the market, you need to be selling, you need to be increasing your income and so on and so forth. That component is not really in the mandate of the Food and Agriculture Organization, but we are talking to other group, like the African Development Bank, who has a big program on what they call desert to power, how to bring renewable solar energy to the countryside, villages, and so on. How you can link up to solve that issue. The other group, or institution addressing the road issue, transportation, all this connection, for example, at the continent level, that's been the mandate of NEPAD, how to come up with a big continental program, the connectivity, the railway, the road, and so on and so forth. Yes, we are keeping an eye on that, because if you look at the continent level, the 55 countries in Africa, most of their development will go through agriculture. Most of them is 80% or 90% of all the country business will go through agriculture. So if we get the land issue right, the investment right through that, then yes, you can start improving the other component. So at the same time, we are talking also to health issue, education, all these other issues is not in our mandate, but we are addressing that, through the village consultation and try to have an integrated approach, that can help I mean, the situation to get the right solution. I wouldn't mind any comment, positive or negative. We are just exchanging. Please, if you have more questions or comments, I'm happy to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A quick question on how you coordinate this project among the many countries. So, which is the level of coordination that FAO has, and how you communicate with the communities? Because it's this is a living project, so like trees grow and die, and like you have droughts and everything. How you coordinate this complex issue? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again. I think I'm going to insist on the monitoring and evaluation system, just because I'm working with NGOs, and I'm working with also deforestation problems, so of course on a very smaller scale. Yeah. But and I know that the main difficulty is the sustainability of this kind of project. Once, you know, the project is ended, and you discuss the monitoring and evaluation system mainly on the agronomic part, well, forestry part, but you also spoke at the beginning about all the different elements that this big, huge project, program also involved. I mean, from ecosystem services for communities, the gender issue and everything. So I was wondering how, apart from the monitoring and evaluation part related to the tree plantation, how do you include also the other aspects? Thanks.
Thank you very much. The coordination, this is really one of the headaches, and mainly when you are dealing with politicians. I don't know, since we started, how many ministers or how many presidents have, those who started in 2007, a lot of them are out of office. You are newcomers, and then you start again, and you know, some come with their agenda, the program, and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's been one of really the difficult one globally. It's not given the complexity of the task, because technically you can still organize yourself to see how you monitor, you coordinate, and so on and so forth. Looking at different string of donors of funding and what needs to be done on the ground, and so on and so forth. But the bigger issue is the political component, mainly with the African Union Commission. They're supposed to be working and, you know, coordinating the whole program. But I mean, we as an institution, as FAO, we are really helping them to organize the coordination component. From the African Union, they have created what they call the Pan-African Agency for the Great Green Wall. It's based in Nouakchott in Mauritania, which is the coordinated body that work with the Commission for Agriculture directly. Yes, we are helping them to look at different components and to look at how it's coordinated. We have an annual steering committee meeting every year where the African Union Commission invites all the institutions that are intervening in the Great Green Wall. The World Food Program, the IUCN, the FAO, I mean, all the donors and the technical counterpart. We have an annual meeting where we report, and that goes in the report of the African Union Commission. And with that, we look at you know, the progress and how we are doing. FAO said yes, all this is reported to not only the donor, which is, for this particular program. It's not only the EU. We have also bilateral donors, like Turkey, like, the World Bank and, other banks that are involved. And we report to the African Union. And there's a coordinator at the African Union level, and then they have created the Pan-African Agency as a technical coordination body to help. The other coordination component that is now in place is the African Development Bank, who want to help to coordinate the donor side, the financial side of the program. And looking at the UN Decade for Restoration, all the restoration issue that is coming globally, I think we'll need to have a robust system that will help, in terms of coordination. Monitoring and evaluation. I just talk about the tree planting, the biophysical component, but it goes together with the socio-economic component. We have established already the baseline for the socio-economic component. That is really part of the consultation of the communities in terms of gender, in terms of natural capital, in terms of financial capital, in terms of vulnerability for food security. All these components also, we studied that so that you can see how better off the population or the community become when you have some investment coming and so on. This is another component. Yes, I did not talk about it. That is a good point to remind that it's not only the biophysical component, but linked to the biophysical component, we also monitor the socioeconomic component. Somebody mentioned the great free trade. I mean, if I look at the monitoring around the Sahara, what we put, it comes to 282 million people that live in that area, which is also a massive market in terms of agriculture, in terms of business, in terms of opportunity, and so on and so forth. I did not elaborate on that because they focus on the tree planting and the grape grower and so on and so forth. But that is really meant for people, how to improve their life and so on. The other component that I did not mention, for most of the countries, they're seeing this as a long-term investment. It's not just a quick fix. Of course, it started 2007 again. It has taken some time, but these are the program. The country are planning that for 20, 25 years. I mean, the time to give those seedlings that will grow, and then you can reap the benefit. Again, it goes up and down. These are just trees. They may be also cut down and so on, and then you have to replant. But the first phase of this program is for 20 or 25 years, depending on the countries. And it's really, really taken seriously by some of the government in the region. And that is even why the program is going down to the Southern Africa, and it's becoming even global. Some of the comments I'm getting is just like, I'm not allowed to, about some other type of wall that they want to build in the southern part of the USA. And some of the comments I'm getting is said like, okay, why not turn it into the similar wall in Africa to have a great green wall instead of just the barrier to stop.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Bene, su questa bellissima suggestione ringraziamo Mokhtar Sakand e quindi un applauso. Grazie per averci illustrato questa bellissima esperienza e questo progetto fenomenale. Dunque, vi abbiamo riservato un cocktail che di cui potete fruire qui a lato. E alle 19 abbiamo la proiezione del film Rand Rush, che ci ha gentilmente fornito il COE. E vi invito tutti a vederlo perché è un film sottotitolato poi in italiano che riguarda le tematiche di cui abbiamo appena parlato e dura solo un'ora, quindi tra le 7 e le 8 per chi vuole rimanere ci farà piacere potervi mostrare questo film. Grazie a tutti, vi ricordo che la prossima lecture è l'11 di luglio, parleremo di energia in Africa subsahariana, non mancate. Grazie. Thank you very much. Very nice, very nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ma just, posso avere anche il suo video?
E il video, yes, sì, sì, te lo facciamo mandare. Tu lo puoi scaricare, magari una chiavetta?
Purtroppo no, non ci manco mai.
Troviamo il modo di fartelo avere.
Are you sitting in room?
Yeah, I'm